What is up, fantasy junkies? Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Sweat podcast presented by What the Lou Media. I'm your host, Kris King. Welcome back to another NBA DFS playoff slate. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. I'm in rare form today. It's a little bit nutty over here, trying to break down the same slate again. I'm looking at the Magic. I want to play them, but they let me down so hardcore last 2 days ago. I don't know what to do. So this slate, very interesting. I think if you can crack it, I think it's a good slate where you can get leverage. You can find some leverage, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go. First off, I want to apologize to anybody who signed up for the contest, the podcast contest league yesterday on DraftKings. I did not realize that. So the prior day we filled it. We got 20 people in, so I made it bigger. And but I realized once you do that, you cannot select the option, which is if this contest does not fill, it will not resize. I don't know how I didn't know that, but I just did not know that. So if you create a contest that's 25 people or larger, you have to fill it. So I guess we're going to stick at 20 here, at least for a little bit. But go over to DraftKings and join up over there at DraftKings.com, Leagues, the Daily Fantasy Sweat podcast. Search that out and join. Already created it today. Yeah, no one's in it because everyone is probably pissed that they set a lineup for it yesterday and it did not fill. But I just created it a little bit ago, and maybe I just haven't updated it yet. So, there's 7 people in. I just did not, I haven't updated it. So it's starting to fill, so get on over there and join and try to take that down and add a little bit to the bankroll there. So we have no winner to shout out, so that is perfectly okay. So it just means we can move on because we have a lot to get through, and we have a lot to get through fast. So as far as yesterday's slate, it was a bit of a nutty one. You had Luka questionable all day, game time decision. He winds up playing. You have KP with the late scratch, kind of messed up some lineups. You had Luka just absolutely go off. I completely faded him yesterday. I was like, well, I don't know if he's going to play or not. I also had a dynasty draft I was doing, so I didn't have a lot of, and I took the risk myself, not being able to check news and be right on top and being able to, late swap and tweak lineups. So, Luka played, and then KP was the late scratch, and so I just faded Luka because I was like, well, if he goes, that ankle looked, pretty bad. So I'm going to fade him all together. He puts up 92 fantasy points, including a game-winning 3-point shot in overtime. This kid is amazing. I cannot believe that the Suns passed on him. I cannot believe that the Kings passed on him. I cannot believe that the Hawks drafted him and then immediately traded him to Dallas. Dallas just got a gem there. So that was an exciting game. That Denver-Utah game was phenomenal. You had the battle of the Bluegrass, the former Bluegrass, and Donovan Mitchell from Louisville, Jamal Murray from Kentucky. Just a hell of a game. Jamal Murray just balled yesterday, as did Mitchell. And, Mitchell wound up leading the Jazz to a victory. It looks like they're going to take out the 2 seed here. Are they the 2 or are they the 3? I can't. Yeah, they're the 2, right? Or are they the 3? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Some nutty games. Like I said, why do I keep using the word nutty? I never use that in my regular daily life. I'm not really going to run down the fantasy performers yesterday, but just kind of encapsulated kind of what happened overall. I'm going to kind of switch up the format today. I want to talk about each situation with each game and what that could bring in sort of a condensed version. I want to go position by position in sort of a condensed version than what I normally do, and then I want to try to do some builds and see which stud we're building around, or if we're building around a stud at all. So let's go game by game. You have first game on the slate, Bucks, Magic, 1:30 game, and we saw the Magic absolutely get blown out last game out. They are on the ropes. It feels like, they're almost done, but they can't even put them away this game, so they're at least going to play 2 more games if Milwaukee wants to shut them out. And does it feel like Orlando's given up? This feels like a very dangerous game because of what happened last time. And I've been overplaying Magic because I like the tight rotations. It's the reason why I like the Nets. It's the reason why I've been playing Magic guys. Their rotations are very tight. But there's other tight rotations going on in these playoffs too, which certainly have much more quality plays and players on their team, but they're just not as cheap. And I just went nuts on Evan Fournier the other day. He's super inexpensive. He's still inexpensive today at 5.3. I'm going to be on some of these Orlando guys, but I'm going to definitely do what I can to limit my exposure and kind of spread them out. So, if I hit one, I still have lineups that are alive, and if one grenades, it's not going to grenade. I mean, literally, Fournier grenaded 50 or more. I think it was like 60% of my lineups, and there were some really good lineups in there. So, and one thing about Fournier, and I was texting this, with the cheese about this, and let me just open my text. So here's, I was talking about Evan Fournier, the first text I sent him this morning. We're always going back and forth, discussing the slate every morning. And I sent him this text, 28, 20, 45, 17. Well, let me tell you first, I sent him the gif of DeMarcus Cousins laying on the floor, just kind of daydreaming while he's getting massaged. And I say, dreaming about all the Evan Fournier shares I have today, just kind of in a joking manner. And then we're talking about Evan Fournier, and I say 28, 20, 45, 17, 46, 29, 38, 31, 32, 28, 21, 35. This was the run Evan Fournier was on as far as fantasy points scored before the shutdown. And where has that Evan Fournier been? I have heard something about him possibly being, he's got some mental stuff going on. I don't know if something has happened in his personal life, and instead of leaving the bubble, he's just decided to stay there. I really don't know what's going on with Fournier, but he's definitely struggling. But the minute I don't play Fournier, I know he's just going to go off for 35, and at a 53, a 5.3K price tag, I don't want to miss the boat. And maybe I should just avoid it altogether. But I know he's going to be super low owned based on what he did last time. So I do want some Magic exposure. This game has the highest total, on the slate. But obviously that's mostly because of the Bucks. They have a 118.5 implied points total for them, and the Magic only have 107. But we've seen Orlando keep this close once, and when it comes to, I'm supposed to just be glossing over these games. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the feeling at this point. Is this game feels like Milwaukee's going to come out and dominate again, but we know that Orlando is talented enough. I don't even know if I'd say talented enough. Coached well, just has those fundamentals, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, even though they have been making those mistakes recently. They have the ability to keep it close and steal a game, as we've seen. Can they steal another one? I'd say it's unlikely, but you just never know. And today, I think a lot of people will be off Orlando. But we'll see. So that's the feel of that game. OKC Houston. We've seen so many inconsistent games here. We've seen, a couple blowouts. One a heavy blowout. One kind of a mild blowout. We saw them keep it close in this past game. Certainly a game I definitely want to target because there's high-end pieces, there's mid-range pieces, there's cheap pieces. So it's definitely, a game to build around. They have a 219 combined total. Houston projected for 111 points and OKC for 108. So that's a pretty good number on both sides. So definitely a game I want to get a couple pieces from. Indiana, Miami, certainly appealing. This game just multiple players went off in this game last time out. Indiana is truly on the ropes and playing for their lives because Miami could sweep them. Man, we're seeing a lot more one-sided, playoff series, playoff matchups than we normally do. And in a bubble where you don't have home court advantage, that it seems weird. Like Miami could sweep Indiana. That's just not normally a matchup that would it's pretty much the two middle of the road teams, but Miami is dominating. It's kind of strange to see that happen, and we saw a couple close out yesterday in true sweeps with Boston and Toronto. They swept those two teams, so we only have two games tomorrow, and you could see a sweep today with Miami, Indiana. It's been a little almost nutty again, and that would have been like a record for me using the word nutty in under 10 minutes. So, Miami, Indiana, a game that could stay close. It's got the lowest projected over-under on the slate, but I don't think that matters because Indiana plays these super tight rotations, and I know I'm going to want a piece from Indiana just because the minutes have been, so concentrated for a lot of these guys. And Indiana's priced up now based on what happened, last time. Brogdon's up there. We'll get into specifics when we go position by position, but a game that, should stay close. It's got it's oddly enough, it's not the closest game as far as the Vegas line. This is Miami favored by 6 as opposed to Houston favored by 3.5. So both of those games obviously could stay close. You have LA and Portland today. And what do you do here? Over on LA, you have obviously LeBron and Davis, and then a bunch of scrubs with nobody you can really count on. Over on the Portland side, it's similar. You got your high-end plays in CJ and Lillard and Nurk, and they obviously cost a lot. I think all of them are going to be pretty low owned today. And you have some playable pieces. Gary Trent Jr. has been valuable, but his defensive effort has sort of taken him out of the offensive game. Melo is definitely somebody I'm going to have a lot of today. Just a little spoiler alert because he's mid-price. He's in that upper 5K range, and he's been playing pretty well lately. So that's kind of what the games look like, from a bird's eye view. If I have concentrated interest on any specific teams, it's definitely Indiana, Miami, OKC, Houston. There's a number of different types of building blocks on both of those teams, on all four of those teams, and those games are going to stay the closest. I'm probably getting fewer pieces than any team on LA Portland just because so much of that is concentrated at the top. Like if you're going to go in on that game, you pretty much have to game stack that game. I guess, you can obviously use LeBron and then nobody else from that game or Lillard, nobody else from that game. But it's hard to, on every lineup I like to build, I like to at least have a run back if possible. It seems to make sense correlation-wise, but it doesn't always have to play out that way. So it's just really tough to get multiple pieces. And of course, I could play LeBron or AD and Melo coming back. We'll see how much we get there. And then Orlando, Milwaukee. I don't know how many guys I want on Milwaukee. Let's just say LA and Portland and Milwaukee, Orlando are sort of the games that certainly have, Orlando's got value. You got studs on Milwaukee, the Lakers, and Portland. So I want to get pieces from those games, but I trust those games the least when it comes to, blowouts and overpriced guys. So that's sort of what the slate looks like from a bird's eye view. Let's go over to position by position. And like I said, I'm going to try to make this a concentrated version of what I normally do and just talk about guys who are the most relevant, and then we'll gloss over anybody else. So at the top of point guard, you got Harden, Lillard, and LeBron at 11-7 for Harden, 10-9 for Lillard, and 10-8 for LeBron. They're all good plays because they all put up good fantasy points per minute. LeBron actually has a better fantasy point per minute than Lillard and is cheaper, but only by $100. But I think LeBron is going to tower over Lillard in tournaments when it comes to ownership. So Lillard could be a really solid play here today. Playing for their playoff lives. Yeah, they can't get eliminated today, but they could put themselves on the brink if they don't show up to play. And today just kind of feels like one of those Lillard days. And like I said, he's going to be super low owned because he's got a higher price tag than LeBron. We've seen LeBron kind of turn it on recently. So Lillard's a very interesting contrarian play, as is, I think, Harden. I mean, Harden with that OKC defense and them just kind of putting Dort on him has sort of frustrated him a little bit, but I think, Harden's going to be super low owned today because of the price, because he has not flashed that super, super high upside, that 80-point upside, that Harden can normally, throw up there, especially when Westbrook is out. So I think, that's somewhere to look today for ownership, but for ownership purposes and the potential to, get up there to an 80-point game. But it's really hard to build around him unless you really trust a lot of Orlando guys. You just have to find a lot of value, and there's not a ton out there today. Okay, moving on. Chris Paul, Brogdon, Dragic. These are sort of the mid-tier guys, and Dragic, I think I'm going to target pretty hard today. He's still only 6'5", and since being in the starting lineup, he's just dominated recently. He's playing more minutes than he's ever played. He's doing it all. He's putting up assists and he's scoring. He's just doing everything he needs to do. And at that price tag, he could be in 100% of my lineups today. Brogdon, a terrific play. Certainly come up in price a bit, but he's still in play. Chris Paul, kind of feel the same way. He's kind of a mid-range guy. We've seen some up and downs from him. Down at the bottom, you got Bledsoe, who just can't get over that minutes hump. He has a great fantasy points per minute, 1.15, but he just can't get over the hump minutes. I just repeated myself, but it's true. He can't get over 25 minutes, and that's really going to limit his upside if it's a blowout, like we saw last time out. Bledsoe's just he's got a really tough time to get there, and he's almost 6K, so not going there. Fultz, he's the one starter who closed the game in the blowout, which seems interesting to me. Makes me feel better about his opportunity, but not necessarily about how he's going to actually play. But I would say he's in there as far as a value piece if you need it. Moving on to shooting guard, Jimmy Butler, 8,100. I think this is where I get off the Butler train. He's overpriced based on what he did last game out. He's going to be highly owned because of that. And I'm not saying that he can't do it again. I'm not even saying he can't put up 50. But I just think his ownership and that price is going to keep me off Butler today. But certainly in a balanced build, which is a great way to build your rosters today, to be contrarian, because I think people are going to be, targeting a lot of those studs, or at least one. It's hard to target multiple studs because there's not enough value. So I think the build today is either one stud and build around them, or just go balance. And if you do go balance, hey, Jimmy Butler could be a piece. He is pretty solid, and you can most likely count on him. CJ McCollum, probably going to come in with low ownership. He's about 7,700, or he is 7,700. He is getting, in close games, he's getting more than 40 minutes, and those are all positives. I don't play McCollum a lot, but today might be one of those days. Can SGA put together 3 solid games in a row? Seems shaky. He's 7,400, and Chris Paul is only 8,000. I understand that's a $600 difference, but I just don't know if I trust SGA enough today. I may have some, but I definitely will not be overweight. Victor Oladipo is one of the cheapest guys you can possibly count on when it comes to Pacers guys. He's 6,300. And I could find myself there if I'm looking to get a Pacer in my lineup. Eric Gordon's in the mix, is 6K. Finally unleashed his minutes, and he played 40. He's put up pretty much, he's been so consistent as far as fantasy output. He's put up 30, 30, 31. And even though he got like an extra kind of averaging 9 to 11 more minutes in the previous 2 games, he still only put up 1 extra fantasy point. So but he's got that upside to give you 50 if he plays really well. And I like Gordon in a situation where you maybe fade Harden. Evan Fournier, we've really already touched on him. We know what his upside is in the real world, but in this bubble world, he's not really been getting there. And I would think his price would come down. That's the one thing, is like 5,300. It's not expensive, but after the games he's had, why is he not like 48, 49? I'm going to have some. I can't help myself. He's going to be super low owned, but I definitely will not have 60%. That's pretty much all I want to talk about at shooting guard. Small forward, Chris Middleton's probably a cross-off for me. Melo, I mentioned I like. I'm definitely going to have some of him. Duncan Robinson, he's got to keep shooting hot. to keep up that fantasy production. And he certainly can. He's a great shooter. He's 5,100. It's a maybe for me. Daniel House, he's somebody who I've noticed can put up stats when Harden is as well. When Harden is really just hogging that usage, House is sort of the second guy that gets in the mix. Gordon seems to find his typically when Harden is off the floor, and then Gordon's somebody who heats up late. He doesn't typically start off hot. So House is in play. I think you can play House with Harden or without. James Ennis, 4-4. We all know what happened in the Orlando game. Got ejected. A decent value play. Limit your exposure to Magic, but he's in the mix. Justin Holiday is a guy that I like, who's sort of seeing the kind of outside of your top four Pacers and Brogdon and Oladipo, Miles Turner, and TJ Warren. He's sort of that fourth guy coming off the bench who is racking up minutes. So at 4,200, I am not afraid to play him today. Don't want any Danny Green, and might go to Lou Dort. Who knows? But he had a pretty solid game last time out. And who knows? For a guy that cheap, could have a decent amount of ownership at small or power forward. You got Giannis up top, great fantasy point per minute, just better than anyone in the league, and even if he plays 28 minutes, can get you there. So, Giannis is in play. Use him if you want. Probably going to be somewhat highly owned considering his price tag at 11-1. Him and Harden. People are going to kind of be choosing between those two as far as like the 11K range. I don't know what his ownership will be. I don't know. It's tough to say, but obviously Giannis is a great play always. Anthony Davis in the mix. I don't feel one way or another about him. Not playing Nurkic. Warren's in the mix because I want to play at least one guy from Indiana if I can. Aaron Gordon I doubt will play. He hasn't played this whole time. Why would he play now? Gallinari I really like. It's kind of a middle of the range play at 6,400. He gets his shots up, and if I'm looking for solid value that I can kind of count on, it's not super value, but if I want to get a piece of that game, but I don't want to really pay up for Chris Paul and I don't trust SGA, Gallo is not a bad way to go. Covington has not really done anything in this stretch of games in the series since Jeff Green has come on. Covington has just sort of been in no man's land, and he's still 6,100. So for me. Jay Crowder is somebody I've been playing a lot of lately. He is very reliable. He gets some minutes, tight rotation there in Miami, and he's 4,200. I'll probably continue to have a good bit of him today. At center, it's kind of there's a lot of plays here today, and at all levels of spend, all different spend levels. That's what I'm trying to say. You got Vooch up top. Disappointed last time. He was in the winning lineups, or I don't know about winning lineups necessarily, but he was I think he scored 50 in the first two games, and then he disappointed this last game. If they keep it tight, keep it close, Vooch could see another good fantasy day, and with some potential ownership based on not performing very well in the last game. Bam Adebayo, who I love during the series, I will definitely have some, 7,600. He has not really reached that level that Jimmy Butler reached, so I'd rather play Bam over Butler if I'm kind of picking one of those other studs. My favorite play in this game is Dragic. Next is Bam, and then Jimmy Butler. Miles Turner, he gets the run. He's kind of produced, 6,800. Don't hate that price tag. Nice middle of the range. Nice, middle of the road range is what I meant to say. Steven Adams, I don't know if he'll play. He left the game and did not return. He's got a leg contusion. That's a bruise. Adams could be in the mix here, but I'm not sure. And when you can go lower to like Brook Lopez at 5,200, you can go to Hassan Whiteside, who is probably going to be pretty popular at 4,800. That's just that's I don't know if you get to Steven Adams because of, if you want to play value, if you're not paying up for Vooch, Bam, Miles Turner in that range, I think you're kind of wanting to save money with Lopez or Whiteside, but Steven Adams could be a solid play here if he starts, and if he doesn't, everyone's going to be on the Noel train. And actually a pretty good matchup for Noel, so if that happens, I wouldn't mind playing him. As far as the second unit guys, Schroeder comes in at the top. He is a bit pricey. at 6,200, but he gets the minutes, so he's in play. I don't want any part of Kuzma. Tyler Hero has been playing pretty great, as well as Jeff Green. These guys are at that kind of nice 55, 54 range. You got Terrence Ross, DJ Augustine, if you're going to mix in a Magic guy, both in the 4K range, 49 and 46. A big gap in here of guys I don't want to play: Gary Trent, Aaron Holiday, George Hill, Darius Bazley. Unless Steven Adams misses, maybe take a shot at Bazley. Austin Rivers, Dante DiVincenzo, and Pat Connaughton in a blowout. These are these bench guys who get run. Milwaukee, they certainly limit their starters' minutes, which means a couple of their bench guys actually get into the 20s. And it's between George Hill, so I guess you could pull him back and play at 3,900. But it's kind of a rotating cast between George Hill, DiVincenzo, and Pat Connaughton. So, sure, I could see you playing any one of these guys, but just go cautiously because it may not go well for you. And at the super low range today at 3,500, Iguodala could be in play. He's been closing games for Miami, so you could always find yourself there. Okay, that's the rundown of position by position. So let's look at some builds now. And my apologies if I just blew through that really fast. It's just we've been looking at these players every day for the what is there to say? We know kind of who the good plays are. We know who the kind of mid-range plays that we can sort of count on are, and we know who, the guys who, are at the lower end who are a bit more risky and could grenade your lineups are. The only thing to really look at that for is to see what prices have changed and whatnot. So, and I do really want to concentrate on the builds today for a minute, and obviously I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, and I'm not going to build full, rosters, but it kind of at least leans you in one way or another to figure out, do you want to get a stud in? If you do, which one do you want to get in? Do you want to go balanced? Kind of what's the way to go. So I previously built a Harden lineup. He's the top guy on the plate. He's the top spend up guy on the slate today. He will probably come in with a fairly decent ownership. And when I say decent, I mean fairly low. So when I do that, I got to figure out who kind of my next guy is, my the Robin to the Batman. And I can't go, super crazy with my Robin because, Harden is so pricey. So I'm going to go Dragic. He's 6,500. It's a mid-range spend, but when I drop Harden into the mix, I only have, I need to clear this roster I have here so I can see what when I drop Harden into the mix, my average amount to spend per player is 5,400, and I don't really want to fill my entire lineup with, mid 5K guys. So I want to pull in Dragic. I think he's got high upside. That's a decent second play, I think. Now, if you want to play the rest of your guys at 5'4", that's certainly fine because not much changes here. I put in Dragic, and the rest of the plays are 53 per player. So I'm still kind of in that same range, but at least I have another slot filled where I feel really good and comfortable about that. And now I can start digging for value. I mentioned how I really like Carmelo today. Portland plays... They play a really tight rotation. They play a lot of their guys into the upper 30s and lower 40s in minutes. If that game stays close, I need some exposure to that game, and really the only affordable piece is Melo that I feel comfortable about. So I drop Melo in there. I am rolling with Jeff Green. It's hard to believe Jeff Green is $5,400, but he's made the most of this opportunity, and he has played really well. Sort of taking, some luster out of, PJ Tucker's never really had luster, but taking some luster out of Covington and really inserting himself into that lineup. For value, I'm going to drop down to Jay Crowder. I mentioned, his minutes are always really solid. His performances are usually pretty good. He is questionable today, but I feel like he plays. And he's at 4.2. And that's a good building block for the rest of my guys. If I want to put in like Justin Holiday for even more value, that's great. I can kind of fill out the rest of my lineup with like another, mid 5K range, and then I have enough to play someone, like a I can probably get up to that 6 range at this point and play like an Oladipo, a Gallinari, a Schroeder, maybe a Miles Turner if I kind of, tweak some things. So, yeah, I can get in Harden and a couple 6K guys and some value. So that certainly is doable. Justin Holiday, if you do insert him for extra value, it's not a given. He could grenade your lineup, no doubt. But I would feel pretty solid about a build that way, especially if I have Harden in the lineup. Now let's look if we want to drop down to Giannis here. All right, I drop in Giannis, and then I still put Dragic in because I think he's just a tremendous play today. And that leaves me at 5'6", so it leaves me in a little better shape. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. Well, I put in Crowder also because I just like the value and I like where he stands. So when I have all three of those guys in the mix, I've got 5'6" per player there, and that really, I feel good about that. It's a nice, solid number that I can build around. I got 2 Miami guys in here, so I want to get in, an Indiana play, and the top minutes guys are Warren, Brogdon, Turner, Oladipo. If I want to go Depot here, he's the guy that I can trust the most, who is the most, the least expensive. I could keep going for that double value with Crowder and Holiday, but I want to try some different builds. So let's put in Oladipo there. I got 5'4" for per player with a small forward, center, guard, and util spot left. And certainly there's guys available in this range. I think unless you're doing a full balanced build with no studs, you are going to have to choose from guys in the range of, and this is the top of that range, which is like 6K. If you're going to have to find some value in there, like Eric Gordon, Bledsoe, Carmelo, or you can stick with the true mid 5K range with like Tyler Hero, Jeff Green. There's some good plays in here. Evan Fournier, if you want to go down that road, Brooke Lopez. But know these guys are going to be high owned, especially if the play is a stud. Like if you put a Giannis, if you put a Harden, if you put a Crowder, these guys are going to be high owned, but you can build the rest of your lineup with, continuing on down. Duncan Robinson, Daniel House, Terrence Ross. It gets a little more dicey here. Whiteside, Fultz, Augustine, Ennis, all these Orlando guys right in the mix here. They are just pesky today. But a way that you could differentiate your lineups, I think, today and save a little bit of money, depending on who you're pivoting to, if it's Harden or Giannis, is play Lillard, because he's probably going to be the lowest owned out of all these studs here. He's sitting right in the middle of, he's got Harden and Giannis above him, who seem more appealing. He's got James and Davis below him, who seem, especially in James, seem safer and cheaper. So I think Lillard's going to be the lowest owned out of all these guys. So you drop him in. And then if I want to play Dragic, which I do, I'm putting him in the mix. And then I'm still sitting at that 5'4" range, but I can take advantage of these guys who I think are going to be higher owned, but have a low owned Lillard. And if Lillard has one of his Lillard type games, playing Carmelo, playing Tyler Hero, playing Crowder, these guys, their ownership becomes less risky, because it means that you're not going to get caught up in this huge sea of guys of when your guys score. You're all moving together, which means you're not going to shoot up the leaderboard, but it means your lineups are probably going to look pretty meh throughout the middle of the day. But you have Lillard going in that very final game of the day, when a lot of other people probably have LeBron, and if Lillard plays a Lillard type game and LeBron kind of struggles a little bit, not even struggles, but if he just doesn't have, a Superman type day, and who knows if his age is catching up with him, who knows what LeBron could be going through. Lillard's playing, LeBron could be in coast mode. Obviously, he wants to, they want to take down this series, and Portland's no Orlando, no Brooklyn Nets, but maybe LeBron feels like they have it in the bag and he doesn't have to give it his all. And maybe, this is an Anthony Davis game, which I think people are going to be less on My point is, you're going to get a lot of these mid-K plays, Lopez, Crowder, Dragic, that other people are going to be on, but you certainly differentiate yourself with Lillard, and you could really see yourself skyrocket up leaderboards there at the end. And that's what you always want. It's good to have a late-night hammer to make you feel better about your lineups. If you can get to a spot where you get to that last game and your winnings are in a pretty good spot and you have a lot in that last game, you feel better that that number in green is going to go up rather than down. So these are some builds you can look at. Let's look at one more build. Let's look at a balanced build. And yes, I want to start it with Dragic. He's my favorite play of the day. Let's just get that out of the way. And what this does, it really is going to bring me to this Indiana-Miami game and this Houston-OKC game. I want a piece or two from, it probably can't be a piece or two from LA, Portland, because I just can't afford it in a balanced build. But I am going to play Melo, so he's going to go in the mix because I want, like I said, I want a piece from that game. So Melo's going in the mix along with Dragic. I mentioned how I really like Bam. He's not really priced up. People are going to be more on Jimmy Butler, so I like that there. And I want to get pieces right now with that. These three guys in the lineup, Dragic, Melo, Bam. I have $6K per player for 5 slots. And I want to target. So I have 2 pieces from Miami. I got to get an Indiana guy. So I feel most confident in, as far as like pricing versus who I like the most, Brogdon is the guy for me. I've already played a center in Bam. I could save a little money and go Turner. I could save a little bit more money and go Oladipo. If I really I could go Justin Holiday if I really want, super good value. Let's put in Brogdon at first because he's who I like the most here. Let's drop in a Brogdon. And at that point, I have 56 per player at this point. And I'm going to kind of be hovering in that range that we talked about, that mid 5K range. And I want some Houston OKC. So I got to figure out where on each side I'm going to go. Obviously, I'm not going to go Harden. I can go Gordon. I can go Jeff Green. I can go House. So I'm going to pull in, let's see, Eric Gordon's 6K. House is 5K. I really like that. Green, I think, is almost the best play here. Oh, man. It's a tough one. I'm going to put in Green at 5'4". He seems like the perfect balance between House's cheap price but potentially lacking upside, and then Eric Gordon's upside but being 6K instead of 5'4" like Green is. So I'm going to drop him in there. When it comes to OKC, going Chris Paul would, I can't even fit him in based on the way I've built this. And he's probably too expensive anyway. If I go Shea, I got to find a couple guys at 4,900. That's doable. I could certainly do that. I can go back to my Crowder. I would have to add in a third Miami piece, which I don't necessarily know if I want to do. But if I don't want to go with SGA for quite a bit less, I can go Schroeder. Wait, where's Gallinari? Oh, wait a second. I got to be on the all tab. But yeah, for 1,000 less, I can go Gallinari. And I feel way better about that than I do for SGA. I feel Gallinari, SGA definitely has that higher upside, but Gallinari and his consistency, I need to stop building before I wind up building a full lineup. Have I built a full lineup and not known it? But yeah, SGA at 74. Yeah, it's a little out of my price range. Gallinari and Schroeder seem to be kind of the plays here if I'm paying up for guys in the Miami-Indiana game and I want to get exposure to OKC Houston. So yeah, it's Gallinari, it's Schroeder, maybe it's Steven Adams, maybe Adams is out and Noel plays. So there's certainly areas that you can get to Houston, OKC. I'd like to try to get at least 1 or 2 pieces from each side, maybe a total of 3 guys from that game. And then maybe I have to find my Orlando piece. I take my shot on which guy from Orlando is actually going to produce. There's a lot that are affordable. Augustine, Ross, Fultz, Fournier. Probably the order I prefer them in. When it comes to upside, I think it's Fournier, Fultz, Augustine, and who's the last guy? Terrence Ross. I think they all have somewhat high upside, but I think that is my favorite when it comes to upside. I think for safety, I would prefer something more like, and safety and building in price, it would be, well, let me actually pull them up and look at them on paper here. I think it's more like, Fultz and Augustine both are close for me. I think it's Augustine, Fultz, Ross, Fournier, because that's their price. Literally, that's the cheapest to the most expensive. So yeah, that's probably where I'd lean. Maybe Fultz is at the top of that because he does have upside and because he randomly closed out that game with a bunch of scrubs in the last game. So I don't know why they did that. Maybe they just are trying to get their young, talented, overall number 1 pick that they traded for playoff experience. So I think it's maybe Fultz, Augustine, Ross, Fournier for me if you're trying to go that route. And I don't know why I had to actually finished out the podcast and said goodbye and then realized I don't know why I didn't mention James Ennis or Gary Clark. And it's because Aaron Gordon is up in the air. I don't think he plays, but obviously they're in the mix as well. So I didn't want to finish the podcast, talk about all these Orlando guys and not talk about actually some of what could be some of the best value when it comes to Ennis and Gary Clark in the mix too. So they are also in play. So that wraps it up for today. It has been the longer podcast than I wanted it to be. Try to keep these short and simple and concise to the point. But sometimes we get on a run. We get on a roll. We start rambling. But I think we covered a lot of ground today and a lot of good points. So yeah, that does it. That wraps it up. Thanks for listening. Thanks for downloading, clicking, subscribing. Make sure you're checking us out on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell them about the Podcast League. And follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And we will see you tomorrow. And until then, as always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and may all your fantasy dreams come true.